Good morning, San Antonio. It's a pleasure to have you here at our Buena Vista Theater at our downtown campus. This is the kickoff event for the 5th annual San Antonio CityFest, hosted by the San Antonio Report. And it's a wonderful opportunity to talk about important things for our city. This kickoff panel is about the future of downtown. Before I turn it over to our very distinguished moderator, I want to share a few thoughts with you all. I'm Taylor Amy. I'm the president of the University of Texas at San Antonio. I have the best job in the world, and I just want to say to all of you, to our panel, we are all in about downtown. If you've been paying attention to things, you know that our new School of Data Science and National Security Collaboration Center, our brand new building over on San Pedro Creek, we're going to be opening that in January. We're already starting to move people from our current campus downtown to populate that building. It's a wonderful anchor for us in downtown with the ecosystem we have here. And Graham Weston, thank you so much for all of your generosity in making that happen. We appreciate you beyond measure. Hopefully in November, we're going to be announcing another big thing that's going to be happening across the creek with another building that we're going to be putting in downtown. That's going to be big news for us. You're all aware of the fact that our merger with Southwest School of Art increases our presence downtown, and the things that we're going to be doing with the art community is really, really valuable as we think about the future and the future of our city. And all of you know that we're working on imagining the next 50 years for our Institute of Texan Cultures, and that's work in progress. Please stay tuned for that. So if you think about it, I grew up in the Boston area. There are all of these Carnegie R1 universities that are so embedded in the Boston and Cambridge landscape that it's very difficult to tell the difference between community and university. Whether it's Harvard, MIT, Northeastern, Boston University, Tufts, Brandeis, Boston College, they're all situated in the urban environment in varying degrees, and they are part of the fabric of the institution of that metropolitan area. And I come from a background of all of my prior places of work. Those institutions were all deeply involved in the cities that they were located in, and I happen to believe that San Antonio is the best city in the world for this relationship between a university and its community. And so that's why we're all in on where San Antonio is going. So I look forward to this conversation, and I want to turn the program over to AJ Rodriguez. AJ has a wonderful background in preparation for what he does now, working for Texas 2036. He started working with the San Antonio Chamber of Commerce, then moved over and became the president and CEO of the Hispanic Chamber. Then he worked as a deputy city manager for the city of San Antonio for a bit. Then he went and worked with the Zacharys and doing governmental and community relations there. And we find now that he's leading this statewide effort with colleagues up in Austin about preparing Texas for its bicentennial in 2036. It's really a state-based public policy advocacy organization that's data-driven. So that's a very powerful position that AJ holds in that organization. He's also the past board member and chair of the Texas Association of Businesses, and he's also the chair of the board of the San Antonio Report. And the thing that I love about AJ is that his family, the Rodriguez family, has 4 generations of Roadrunners in its family history, and that is a world record for us. And I know AJ's daughter Alex is here, and so Alex, no pressure, but we're thinking about 5 generations at some point, and that will certainly lock it down for the Rodriguez family. So AJ, I'm going to turn it over to you.
So far, right?
Yeah, birds up, everybody.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Amy. Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Amy, for that very, very kind introduction. It's just a pleasure to be back here at UTSA, my alma mater, and I want to welcome everyone on behalf of the San Antonio Report to our 2022 CityFest. I so appreciate the invitation from our CEO, our President and CEO, Angie Mock, and our Editor-in-Chief, Lee Munsell, to come in and talk to you today. And really, what this is about is fulfilling our mission to engage and connect with our community And the way I see this, it truly is a celebration of local, digital, and I like to add hardcore journalism. So we're going to dive into the issues that shape our city and therefore our stories, and what incredible stories all of our talented reporters and our columnists weave for all of us. So I want to thank them for their talent, their passion for their craft, their commitment to all of us in writing the kinds of stories that I like to tell our editor, make you stop and say, I have got to read this right now. So thank you for all that. And the best way that we can all demonstrate that gratitude is to become members of the San Antonio Report if you aren't already. Really an investor with the San Antonio Report. And you can do that by going to sanantonioreport.org and click on the Become a Sustaining Member pop-up. And speaking of investors, we want to thank all of our CityFest presenting sponsors this morning, the City of San Antonio and the Bexar County Economic and Community Development for allowing us to be together today and really throughout the week, both in person and virtually. So all those joining virtually, thank you for being with us today as well. So before I introduce each of our panelists, I wanted to kick things off a little bit different with a personal reflection to get the creative brain juice flowing amongst our group here that you see in our audience. So here it goes. So downtown San Antonio, there's a tunnel that links St. Mary's School with a church, so first graders didn't have to cross a busy street, and recess ended when the ball went over the fence from the rooftop playground. A half-mile after-school walk, video games at the Aztec Theater, sprints up giant City Hall steps to hug mom, homework at Grandma's Spanish beauty shop, where Goodwill remains near El Mercado, Astropops, Chamoy, hide-and-seek, and curandera blessings next door at the Mireles Botanica. UTSA MBA weekenders would study group at Pico de Gallo. Chamber interns used to park at the Marina Garage. Ghosts show up at the Alameda around 9:45 p.m., and looking up in order to look out is what happens from the City Hall basement, an old moat with jail bars on the windows. All this made for an envious workplace commute from Chardine House on Arsenal Street, 5 generations of family stepping underneath Corinthian porch columns, 25 years of Riverwalk walks, eating in Southtown, First Friday, Second Saturday, eating in Dignity, yoga at Confluence Park, eating at Pearl, beloved birth of SoFlo HEB, eating there too, and eating pretty much everywhere downtown. Once in a while, a long journey to the north happens to get a coveted chispa. That's inside Loop 410. But we rush back and eat again downtown. So with that, downtown really ought to be an experience and a lifelong one. So today, we're here today to hear from 5 downtown experts about their experiences, their vision for downtown. What does it look like? Who lives and works here? What are the challenges, opportunities, the ingredients that go into developing a vibrant community in our city's core? So you've seen all the redevelopment that's happening throughout downtown. We truly are making history today. So with that, I'm going to introduce our panel, Jenna Saucedo Herrera, CEO and fellow Chispa aficionada, who has effectively created what I like to call a regional abrazo and has taken the EDF next level. She represents Greater SATX, our economic development entity. Just wave while I introduce each of you. Randy Smith, co-founder and CEO of Weston Urban, responsible for the development of Frost Tower and partnering with Rackspace founder Graham Weston on a variety of projects to, quote, build a downtown our kids want to come home to. Matt Brown is president and CEO of Central San Antonio, managing the Corps' 1 square mile public improvement district, the PID, and further leading a team of what Central terms passionate placemakers. My former colleague, and thank goodness still friend, Lori Houston. She's Assistant City Manager with the City of San Antonio, who oversees the Center City Development Office, Arts and Culture, Historic Preservation, Housing, World Heritage, HR, and I'm sure I left a few things out, Lori. And Tommy Gonzalez, our owner and proprietor of Puro Handsome Barbershop at the Majestic. He's a self-described business casual cabron. And for some reason, spell check capitalized cabron when I typed it, Tommy, so the word has gotten around. So Tommy has experience in TV broadcast, music business, After spending some time overseas, he became a barber and barber instructor, and he also leads a group of volunteers and students providing free lunches, free haircuts, and at Haven for Hope, probably free lunches too.
Sometimes I bring food in.
There you go. So here we go in our first question of the day. San Antonio is more than 500 square miles. We are pretty spread out if you think about the amount of size geographically of our city. So as I understand it, what they call the centroid of the city, this is where we have the greatest concentration of population. Was near Loop 410, I-10, and that was about 15, 20 years ago. Now that's migrated northwest by the medical center in terms of the way the population is distributed. So all that to say, why does the vivacity of this 1 square mile we're talking about for the PID, Matt, or this 20 square miles that emanate from that little tile in San Fernando that say this is the center of our city, why does it matter? So I'll start with Jenna, and we'll go in order.
Oh, well, that's a broad question. First of all, let me say, AJ, Angie, thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. Look, San Antonio has so many things going for us, right? If you look at population statistics, in fact, if you look at the fastest growing area of town by way of residential rooftops, it's actually out past near 151, right? So even further west. So growing by way of population, if you disaggregate that data and you look at who's coming to San Antonio and how we're growing, you see that demographically we represent the future face of Texas and the United States by way of being almost 60% Latino or Hispanic. So we've got a lot going for us. I think that historic investments in our community that have really aided the sprawl, if you will, have been beneficial and harmful in a variety of ways. But bottom line up front is that every top performing metro around the world by any economic statistic has a vibrant downtown, has a vibrant core. And that's why we at Greater SATX are so committed to downtown and growth and prosperity in downtown San Antonio.
Fantastic. Randy?
Great. I think the question was, why does downtown matter? And one of the core truths that we believe echoes Jenna's point, which is great cities have great downtowns. I mean, you can't name a great city that you've been to that has a hollowed out core. And I think we're all aligned here that San Antonio needs to be the greatest city that it can be. And so while Westover Hills is somebody's neighborhood, and Stone Oak is somebody's neighborhood, and Schertz is somebody's neighborhood, downtown is everybody's neighborhood. It's a spot for everyone. And that's why it matters. If you look at our challenge as a community is really how to grow well. So many communities across America don't have that problem. Last year, more people moved to San Antonio, Texas than any other city in America. And that's a hard one to believe. Other major metropolitan areas in Texas actually shrunk last year. And yet we grew. More folks moved to San Antonio than any other city in America. And if you run down that list, number 2 is a city that's very similar to us, Phoenix. We could draw a lot of parallels there. But then you get down to number 9, and it's New Braunfels, Texas. And so as a region, we have this great challenge of how to grow well. And I would suggest that if we don't grow the core well, we're not going to be able to grow well.
Matt?
Well, picking up on the theme and maybe building on what Jenna and Randy said. On the economic side, for every dollar invested in downtown San Antonio, you get at least a 7 times ROI for that for the city, which is twice as much as any other regional business center in the entire city. So on a pure economic basis, downtown matters. And I'm a newbie here, but having been here and fallen in love with San Antonio and being influenced by all the people that I've met, I can also see downtown as the civic center of the city. It's not just where the city government, the county, you even see the state and the feds all here, but it's where people come, right, to engage in civic life. It's where the protests happen. It's where you come to advocate for the things that matter to you, to City Hall. So it is the center of our civic life. It's also the historic center of the city for the Native American community, for the Spanish and Hispanic community. It all sits right here. And today it's also the arts and entertainment and cultural center. I love that I hear other districts like, we're the cultural center and we're the cultural, like, well, I'm gonna put the flag down for downtown. Let's have some friendly competition, but you can see it, you can feel it from the legacy, historic, cultural, from Market Square and all the celebrations, to hopscotch, who came in just a couple years ago. That's just sort of blowing people's mind with world-class art right in the heart of downtown. So those are some other reasons why I think downtown matters.
Lori?
And when you talk to other peer cities, when we talk about San Antonio, they say, we have something, we have soul. Other cities, they don't have the history and culture that San Antonio has. I think people forget that during the Battle of the Alamo, San Fernando Cathedral was an operating cathedral. We had La Vieja, it was a neighborhood. We have so many cultural and historical assets that other cities don't have. We have the #1 and #2 tourist attraction in the state of Texas with the Riverwalk and the Alamo. So we are very unique, and that matters to the world, the United States, and the state of Texas.
Tommy?
Why does downtown matter? I want to expand on what everybody else has said, is that it is the center of our community. It's the heart of our city. It is so diverse by nature. Everybody has a different reason to celebrate and why they love downtown. And I like to call myself a city boy. I've always been attracted to inner city. I've lived in some really great cities that I feel have great downtowns, and that was the reason why I moved to those cities. So I want to reinforce what everybody else has said, is that great cities have great downtowns, and San Antonio is absolutely no exception. And I'm not just comparing it to cities here in this country, like cities abroad. Great cities have great downtowns, and it does bring a diverse culture and a really, really strong and rhythmic heartbeat to its community. Despite what neighborhood you may live in that city, it's still your downtown.
There really is a true authenticity and genuineness about San Antonio in general, but downtown really captures all that in a really kind of special ways. That's what I'm hearing from our panel. So according to a recent San Antonio Report study, around 1 in 7 people in San Antonio's workforce worked from home in 2021. And according to a recent U.S. Census Bureau figures, it's a jump from 2019 when about 1 in 25 worked remotely. So Matt, what do the boots on the ground say about what you're seeing in the PID, Public Improvement District, including issues with security? And then Jenna, does the core remain a viable place to attract relocations from other countries, states, and even regionally or locally, from even outside Loop 1604 for that matter? So I'll start with Matt.
So mine on the boots on the ground on security. I think what we're seeing over the last couple of years is that the quality of life perception. So these are issues around, things like, lying on sidewalks or sometimes like public urinations and these, not pretty things. Those types of instances have increased. And a lot of effort has gone on to get after that, and so we're working on that in partnership and with the city, with private property owners and businesses. So it's a challenge, but on the it's not a safety issue as far as like from our perspective anything really like violent or serious. There have been some instances that have been published recently, so we know about those, but. I think it's a challenge, and we're on it. And I think we know this also is that I think perception is more heightened than reality. So it's definitely tough, but I think part of our work is to really get the facts out there as well to help people kind of calibrate and get down to like what's really going on, and because I think there's a little bit, not a little, in some ways a lot of perception issues rather than reality.
Great. Jenna?
So I'm going to double down on that because I do think that there's a challenge with perceptions really being exacerbated. I have the privilege of serving as the chairwoman of Visit San Antonio. Our mission is to invite the world to San Antonio. So think conventions, think tourists, et cetera. And we survey those folks that come to San Antonio, and they continue to talk about safety in San Antonio, feeling safe, et cetera. Now, that is changing, right? I mean, we've seen some of the incidents, isolated incidents downtown, pivoting over to the workforce, right? I employ a small team downtown, and of course, as you know, get a chance to interact with CEOs all the time that are contemplating the San Antonio region for investment. Employees walking to and from their place of work. I mean, safety does become an issue of concern. And it's not necessarily because these isolated incidents, it's because just to oversimplify the vacancy rates, right? So we had, we were really experiencing some solid momentum, right? Everybody talks about the decade of downtown. I'll tell you, just about 4 years ago, in 1 year, our organization received 4 RFPs, I kid you not, for over 400,000 square feet within the urban core, contiguous. At that time, we didn't have it. I remember talking to Graham about one particular challenge and one particular RFP, but we didn't have it, and they were specifically asking to be in the urban core. Of course, this was prior to the pandemic. Fast forward to where we're at today, we actually now have available space because of the remote work hybrid dynamic that we're experiencing. And people are still thinking about San Antonio and downtown San Antonio, but they want to be in economic centers. They want to be in vibrant locales. You mentioned the medical center, right? Companies are looking at the Port of San Antonio, Brooks, all of these different regional centers within the San Antonio region that we're fortunate to have. But I think we need to continue to prioritize downtown. We can't rest on our laurels. The decade of downtown didn't get us to where we needed to be. I'm bullish on downtown, and I think we need to hit the gas pedal.
Fantastic.
AJ, I want to pile on there.
Please.
I don't mean to hijack, but
Not at all.
I would take a little, it wouldn't be a good panel without a little disagreement. I disagree fully. I mean, I think we do have a less safe, less comfortable downtown today than we did 2 years ago. And I would say it's not perception, it is reality. We all spend as much time downtown as anyone. And I would just pile on to what Jenna said, of now is the time to hit the accelerator. I kind of think of like old school Jane Jacobs' book as kind of the Old Testament of downtowns, The Life and Death of Great American City. And eyes on the street and density is what cures a lot of these ills. And we just don't have that right now. We are in a transition phase as a downtown. It's been well covered that there's $3.3 billion worth of construction going on downtown. That creates its own set of issues, which are what we call a champagne problem. I mean, it's better than not having $3.3 billion of construction in progress happening downtown. But I would raise that as a real issue for anyone here or watching at home, is that right now we are in a spot where it's not better. And density will be a big part of that cure.
Well, let's kind of continue this thread, Tommy, and I'm sure you get a lot of conversation, from folks in your chairs about, the condition of downtown. And what do you hear from patrons, and what do you think are the opportunities and the threats for small business owners that are in downtown?
What was the last part again? What was the?
What are kind of the opportunities and threats that you see for small business owners in the inner city?
The opportunities for small business owners in downtown right now are really unique in the fact that the only benefit I think that came out of COVID was that it kind of opened the door for us a little bit for the smaller guys to walk in and to set up a stake in downtown. Before that, there was so much convention work. There's so much convention, so many conventions that come to San Antonio, that was the people who book that stuff and the people who work that stuff, they go into kind of an autopilot mode. Your quarters are booked out because you know your work and you know what's coming. You can determine what your occupancy is going to be. When that rug got pulled out from everyone, nobody knew what to do really. And the opportunity for local businesses to come in and to set up on Houston Street was, I couldn't do this in any other city. And I thought that was really special. So that's why it matters so much to me and why I wanted my shops in downtown. I used to work in broadcast and I used to work in media and I used to do a lot of big upfront presentations for networks in other big downtowns as well. So I recognize the significance and the importance and the perception that being in downtown creates, and that was important. just down the street from me, my neighbors, Poblanos on Main is coming, and they're going to be right there on Houston Street, right next to the Majestic, which is a world-famous theater. So these are the opportunities I think are great, is that we get to really capitalize on that perception of being on Houston Street in downtown San Antonio, which is greater than any main street in any USA city across the country. So hopefully I answered your question. I think that was the benefit for local businesses to come in. And one of my shops is just a 2-chair barber shop. And when I used to talk to barbers who have been in the game, they'd be like, you're not gonna have enough volume there, you're gonna get crushed, it's not how it works, it's traditionally. And I'm like, well, I'm not really interested in tradition. I wanna bring barbering back to San Antonio on my terms. And this is how I did it.
And I appreciated
So if I could thank COVID for anything, it's for giving us the opportunity to get in the door.
And then that entrepreneurial spirit earlier that we were talking about, Tommy, with you're launching your own product line, for instance,
Correct.
in terms of from the barber shop, right?
Again, perception
It all
matters.
emanated from that work.
Somebody was talking about how perception is heightened above over reality. Yeah, absolutely. Like, we are still just a small barbershop, but we've got our own product line. We're made in Texas. We work with a manufacturer in Houston. That's part of my story. The fact that we are situated and that we set our foot down our first brick on Houston Street is part of our story too. And I intend that to be part of our story in the future.
So that's the story I mentioned a little bit earlier, referenced San Antonians also fleeing older office buildings and going into new and modern facilities. So wanted to direct this question at Lori. What's been your experience and where San Antonians want to work? And give us some insight on what you actually see is happening today and what we can expect for tomorrow. And then Randy, think about that question as well. So,
The pandemic definitely changed the workforce. I mean, the city of San Antonio, we acquired the old Frost Tower. We refer to that as City Tower. And during the pandemic, we cut down the number of floors we were going to occupy by 3 just because we knew people could work from home. We were always reluctant to allow that, but now we know that it was a benefit and employees liked it. And I think a lot of companies did that across downtown. I think what we need to do in Centro and the downtown stakeholders is come up with a toolkit to help convert some of this Class C office space into housing or other spaces. And so we can focus on occupying that Class A space and really activate downtown. And I think that's where we're going to be going next.
In Oslo, Norway, where they took a classic old building that was in the heart of their town square, Youngstorget, and it had tons of businesses that had been there for generations, and they all moved out to make way for mixed use, for residential, for commercial, for education, for a lot of tech, and that was noteworthy in my travels, and I see that in San Antonio as well.
Randy?
Yeah, I would pile on. Lori, thank you for acknowledging that we do need some extra tool sets to do what we're doing. We have 2 buildings in particular that we are in the process of transitioning from office to residential, both historic buildings. And it's the Lord's work. I mean, I like to say that there's a lot of projects that we work on, and only 2 of them work on us. And these are these old buildings. And it's a knife fight. But the office is not going away, to be clear. One of the great ironies that I wrestle with, because obviously we think about this a lot and talk about this a lot, is I think a huge positive to come out of COVID is I think a more national discussion around mental health. And I'm not a mental health professional, but I'm a dad and a husband and a San Antonian, and I have a hard time squaring an emphasis on mental health with increased isolation. Like, we have not changed as humans. People still want to be around others. Now, how often that happens and in what context that happens, I think leads this trend that the brokerage community would call the flight to quality, which is why we're talking about some of these Class C buildings, and is that really conducive to the way an organization wants to work? But it's our belief firmly that the companies that come out of the next few years that continue to collaborate in person will have a competitive advantage over others in their sector. So the office is not going away, but we're going to have an opportunity with a bunch of Class C or maybe functionally obsolete office buildings downtown to turn into some of that density I was talking about earlier.
And I'm going to come, yes, please.
Just real quick to that, a clarifying point. I think the flight to quality is the right way to say it, not necessarily new. Because what I'm seeing in conversations is people want authentic. And I actually think this is, on the heels of a pandemic, your work environment, your workplace has to be as inviting or more inviting than your home, right? So CEOs are getting really creative, developers are getting really creative about placemaking. Further to that, what I'll tell you is I think this is a great opportunity for San Antonio. This entire remote work environment is huge for us. You can work for any company around the world and live in San Antonio and keep more of what you earn. So that first and foremost is a great thing. In fact, that has actually altered all of our outbound advertising campaigns specifically to talent. We are attempting to attract talent to San Antonio, all about keep more of what you earn. But beyond that, within our pipeline for projects, what we're seeing is companies are, as they're contemplating, and I'm overgeneralizing again, but as they're contemplating their various investments and incorporating their hybrid remote work environments, they're contemplating what I'm going to call a regional office or a center of excellence. They all call it their different things, regional headquarters, but it's basically a hub within a geography where these remote workers can report in. And because we're centrally located in North America, I think we are perfectly positioned for these types of 300, 500 person operations, and we're seeing them in the pipeline, and we're attempting to really focus our marketing efforts on those types of operations as well. So it's a blessing, in my opinion, for San Antonio.
Excellent. And I'm going to come back to Randy. I'm going to come back to you on the new Frost Tower and talk about just downtown development in general. But in the meantime, let's talk about downtown transportation. So I'm going to start with Tommy. And each of you answer the question: what does the future of transportation look like in the PID?
Man, I guess I can be sour on this one. I don't know. I think about that a lot, and I think transportation and parking and the fact that San Antonio is a society that is so dependent on their vehicles. That's going to be a hard one. That's something that I have a lot of concern for in downtown. I've mentioned that I love downtowns, and I've lived in other downtowns, and they've all had public transportation, reliable public transportation that runs at hours that actually work. And I don't see that in San Antonio, and I don't know how that perception is going to change. But I think that is the one thing that is my biggest concern for downtown San Antonio, is that we are going to be cut off because there is no parking and there is no reliable public transportation that gets people in and out safely to downtown. So hopefully I answered the question.
Yeah,
but
Lori?
Before the pandemic, I'll say we had the City Tower. It had 732 parking spaces, and we had 1,400 employees going into that tower. We had a major parking problem. The pandemic solved that for us, because now we have hotel office spaces in the tower. People are coming in 1 or 2 days a week. We can park 1,200 people in 600 spaces, because I have to give some to Randy. And so we have enough parking for that tower just because of the way we've changed how we're working. So parking is becoming more available, but I think what we need is more multimodal and biking facilities in downtown, because we do have a large amount of city employees who do live downtown. And we did offer an incentive to employees who decided to ditch their car. And we said, if you ditch your car, don't bring a car to work, commit to a car-free commute, ride your bike or take the bus. And several of them taken us up on that offer. So we're going to continue to monitor that. But the biggest complaint was, where do I put my bike? Do you have showers? And so we're having to change some of the office environment to accommodate that, but there is a demand for that multimodal specific to bikes.
Matt?
So I would double down on multimodal for sure. And I'm no transportation expert, so with that said, I mean, you see, or I've read about in the future, I mean, there's some big thinking around like autonomous, vehicles and systems, and 5G is supposed to enable that, and there'll be 6G. And I mean, when you get to that place, and that place is getting probably faster to us than we realize. The need for parking, the whole concept of parking changes a lot, right? And it's really about these hubs of parking, and then you've got much more kind of local transportation, that's circulating people, through and around, downtown. So that's one. Two is, what is Randy saying? I just want to double, triple down, pile on, as he said. We think the number one thing for downtown for the future is 100,000 people living downtown, not just in that 1 mile, but in the regional center. And when you have that kind of density, then you have a downtown, you have an area that people live in, they work in, they play in all at once. And so again, these demands for parking, the demands for parking transportation is because everyone's commuting everywhere, right? And downtown's functionally a commuter downtown. You commute here to visit, you commute to work, you commute to go to school. So as it transforms into a truly living and residential downtown, those demands will shift and change. I just think you won't have as much of it. We just came back, my team just came back from Vancouver. I mean, talk about a city that has got a residential downtown, and it's transformative. Like, so many ills are just like terminated. They just don't exist in a place like that. They have different ills, but not the ones of, public security like we talk about, not about parking like we talk about. I mean, those things don't exist. So I just think in the future, there are some more, significant pieces of significant systemic changes that will drive the behavior differently and get us out of a lot of the commuting, the dependence on cars. For me, it's an addiction on cars. The last thing I'll say is I grew up in Los Angeles. And I lived in the Bay Area for a long time. I have seen people really addicted to cars. I have never seen anything like this here. Like, here, it's off the scale, right? So it'll take cultural change. And
Sounds like
I'm talking about it, but there's cultural change that has to happen too.
Sounds like what I'm hearing is about solving for better use of what we have existing, and then also just more density in lots of ways. Randy, to answer the question about transportation, but also just talk about your vision for the future development of downtown. A Frost Bank Tower, the new tower was that we just got, that I could see from my office window. Austin got theirs 20 years ago, right? And we're getting ours now. Do we see ourselves on a similar trajectory from that standpoint? And what are the pieces of other cities that we want? What are the pieces that we don't want? So maybe answer those in two ways. And then Jenna, that would be a good question for you too.
Sure.
I'll just listen to my chair.
I'll take that in order. I do want to talk about transportation first, the way you asked it. I'll take a little bit of a different approach. I think of our city's mass transit opportunities in sort of two tracks. One of the great things about living in a place as wonderful as San Antonio is a lot of us don't get out very much. It's so nice to be here, but I think that can bite us sometimes. And so I've long joked that our slogan for San Antonio's mass transit could read something like, San Antonio mass transit, our procrastination has finally paid off. Like, that could be where we go. If you go to Denver, Colorado today, you'll see a development called Union Station. Yeah. And it'll blow your mind. And you'll think, this must have been here for 50 years. Union Station was developed in 2014. And so as a community, we missed our chance for fixed rail. That's my opinion. I don't see that coming. And the good news is, so many smart communities across America are solving the same problem in the same way on wheels instead of rails. And so I would commend VIA and its board and everyone that's been involved for the ART plan. So dedicated lane, dedicated service around it, impactful corridor that runs through downtown, I think is going to be our answer. And I think that we could end up looking really smart in terms of a case study for other communities that missed their chance for rail, but now there's a better way, or at least an as effective way. And then the second way I think about transit in San Antonio, to Matt's point, is there's a lot of talk about walkability. That has been a buzzword in our circles for a long time. And I may be a little bit of a contrarian, but I don't find San Antonio to be all that walkable. I don't either. And I think that's okay. We are Texans. We love to drive. We live in a big place. You need to drive places. So when we think about transit in San Antonio, it's not so much how do we walk more, but how do you drive less? I think everybody, when you say that, everybody would like to drive less. No, we don't want to get rid of our cars for the most part. You're always going to have a small sector of the community that just wants to ride their bike or walk, and I love that. But the challenge in where downtown becomes, again, a competitive advantage is, I'm a prime example of this. I lived in New Braunfels for the last decade. And during COVID, my wife decided to move into town. So my commute is now less than 2 miles, and I cannot put a value on how much I love driving less. And I think that resonates with someone who lives out on I-10. I think that resonates with anyone that lives up north on 281. I think that resonates with the large group of people that are moving out to Castroville and Lavernia and places like that. And so the opportunity to drive less in San Antonio, I think when paired with this advanced rapid transit and dedicated lane future of VIA, is a good way to think about how transit can help our community. And then as it relates to the development of downtown, since you brought up my kids, I'll go with it. I love my kids. I have one right now. I have a 13-year-old son. And to me, he is an excellent proxy for downtown San Antonio. So I've heard it said, I did not coin this phrase, but I do love it, that we're a city that's 300 years old, but in a lot of ways, we're still just growing up. And I think that fits for downtown. And so I would suggest that our downtown is going through puberty. I think of this when I look at my 13-year-old. I can see like the wonderful man that he is going to be, but holy moly, there's a lot of work to happen between now and then. He's awkward. And downtown is awkward right now. Good luck taking the same street to work 2 weeks in a row. You know, it's going to be closed, or there's going to be dust. It's going to be messy. It's like puberty. And so, you know, I think where the real magic happens is as we come out of that puberty, as we begin to take the form that we're meant to have as a city. And I would just encourage everyone right now who cares about downtown, or if you don't, remember it is indeed your neighborhood, to be patient with downtown and to invest in downtown. Because we are not yet what we will be at maturity, but all the bones are there and you can see the future. And as it relates to development, again, I'll come back, it's just all about density. It's about density. We have an abundance of surface parking lots in downtown San Antonio, and I would press you again to find a great downtown that shares that characteristic. I think out of our company, you will see predominantly residential.
Gotcha.
We don't have any additional office projects on the books. I don't know of anyone else that does. And to me, this is part of this mix of how do we round out a true mixed-use downtown. So over the next 3 years, we'll deliver over 700 units, which is just a drop in the bucket, as everybody knows. But when we have diversity of backgrounds, when we have diversity of incomes, and then one that just gets overlooked too much is diversity of schedules. When we have activity around the clock downtown is when I think folks will start to feel like, you know, we're into young adulthood.
Excellent. Jenna?
Well, for the sake of Randy's son, I think we should take this recording, put it in a time capsule, and 20 years from now, I think we should check on downtown San Antonio and also check on your son and your family. But just very simply, I think the transportation question was answered. I think obviously more options, multimodal, as creative as possible. But I think as it relates to downtown development, just to kind of echo some of the sentiment, I think we've talked a lot about density to get there, residential development, but the need for basic safety, right? At the macro level, though, as a community, call me biased, but I tend to believe that an access to a good quality job is a means to several ends, right? I mean, if you can get a good job, you can break down generational cycles of poverty, you can transform individual lives. We in San Antonio do not have a jobs problem or a people problem, but we do have a transferable skill set problem. We have a problem with educational attainment or lack thereof. And until we get serious about what skill sets we need and equipping our San Antonians to get there, we're not going to see the true transformation in our economy. Programs like SA Ready to Work, removing the financial barrier to entry, that will help. But it all depends on what our employers need, not just employers that are hiring today. They need the talent. They're bleeding in that space, but also employers of the future, and staying in lockstep with regards to the supply and demand on that front will be important.
Got you. Workforce
AJ,
is a
I
key
just
ingredient.
wanted to add something
Please,
real
Lori.
quick on the importance of density, and something people forget. There are 6,300 housing units that will come online in the next 5 years. And because of the pandemic, there were a lot of projects that were stalled. And so all the construction you see downtown, it's only going to get worse over the next 2 to 3 years. So to go back to your awkward stage, but we need that density. We need those eyes on the ground to really improve and create that neighborhood that we want for downtown.
Lori, sometimes I get the feeling that you think about El Mercado to the Alamo Dome and that corridor. We've been talking a little bit more about more residences downtown and more density. And that area is kind of meant, it feels like it's meant more for tourists. But the Southtown and Pearl feel like they're more geared towards locals in a way. And H Park, I think, has done a good job, Hemisphere Park, of blending those two somewhat between local and tourism. Are there other places like that that are slated for this kind of destination?
You know, the great thing about Hemisphere is that we had time and patience, and we've been planning that since 2009. And so you think about Pearl, Kit bought that in 2000, and it is what it is today, 20 years later. Hemisphere, we started planning in 2009. There's 2 more phases that we have to do for Hemisphere. So it's about intentional planning and implementing that plan and making sure that you have the tools and the stakeholders to support that plan. Like La Villita is a great example. We've gone through a major master planning effort. We have Johnny Hernandez, who is going to be building 3 restaurants in Maverick Plaza. That is going to change La Villita and bring in more locals to help with the shopping and the business in that area. But also you have South Alamo Street improvements and doing those public improvements that are walkable, that create shade. And so it's just about being intentional and pairing those public improvements with those business opportunities. Zona Cultural is another opportunity we have, and we've been working with Centro, and there are several public improvements and housing projects planned in that area. So I think it comes just back to good planning, stakeholder engagement, but putting the resources behind it. There hasn't been a bond program since 2012 that didn't have money in it for Hemisphere. The same for Zona Cultural. You need to continue that, and then the private investment will follow.
Excellent.
AJ, I'll pile on there. One of the things that I love about San Antonio is almost any development of scale is being done by San Antonians. So if you look around at these things, and I can tell you anecdotally that the focus of all of those developments is on the local. I mean, we are developing these things for us, for our children, for folks from our region. And to me, I love tourists because they're one of the best barometers for are we doing it right? So I don't remember the last time I was at the Pearl and didn't see a tour bus. I mean, when we travel, you want to go see what the locals love. That's what you want to do when you go to a city. And so for me, those tour buses dropping off a bunch of folks at the Pearl is a great indicator that that was placemaking done pretty well. You know, I think, you know, it's when we design things from the reverse approach that I think that we get in trouble when we design specifically for a visitor. I think the nature of the visitor is they want to do what the local wants to do.
That's so true.
And that's one of the many benefits of having so many San Antonians developing San Antonio. That's not true in other cities.
Yeah, people vote with their feet, that's for sure.
And I failed to mention the importance of UTSA expanding downtown and Zona Cultural. Having backpacks in that area of downtown is going to be a game changer.
Gotcha. Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, so I'll pick up on that. So, yeah, for us, and for me, I think UTSA is the single most important catalytic piece of commitment and work that's going on. It is a complete game changer for the future of downtown. And I don't know if Taylor's still here, but like his commitment and his effort, and in particular, if it happens to pass that thousands of students end up living downtown, not just coming to commute to class, then we actually have this college downtown, right? And that adds all kinds of economic vibrancy, it creates new retail and businesses. It's also a generator for the future, entrepreneurship, new businesses, and then people fall in love, right, and they have families. And so it is the heartbeat of a whole community, is a college downtown. So I think that is, like, to me, it's sort of number one as a catalytic piece of work, and it's inside of Zona Cultural. Also, sort of picking off what Randy said, you can also look at like other pockets, like River North, right? Things are really starting to happen, and there's other projects coming online. That south of Pearl and north of sort of the edge of the PID, that whole area is going to transform over the next 3 to 5 years. So that's another space that's going to come online. And then those surface parking lots, what I hope for is that all of them get transformed into mostly residential and mixed use. And what we'll see then is, I actually think that our visitor area is pretty small, like the tourist area, and it's going to get, residential is actually going to interweave with it, right? And so I think the visitors, to Randy's point, they'll come like, oh my God, like I'm in this amazing downtown. It's way better. It's so much richer than I went to the Alamo and I went to the Riverwalk. And the last thing I'll say is the Alamo, like the work that's going on at the Alamo, and the work that UTSA is working on with the ITC and the future of that, it's very conscious. It's very intentional that those things are being designed for the local community, for the San Antonians, first and foremost, right? And for Texans, and then for the rest of the world. So I really see the whole, like a flip of how are we designing these tourist or reconceiving these tourist spaces really into our spaces that visitors will just come, this is amazing, they're going to really be amazed, right? And more will come, but it's because we're there first and we're loving it first, right? And bringing our families to it first.
Yeah, it's amazing how many assets the UTSA has downtown with, what happens with football at the Alamo Dome, and you have the ITC, and if you think about the cybersecurity and the School of Art, and all the way to the downtown campus where we're at today. It's just amazing what a presence it
here
has.
now, so close to downtown, is great as well. Like there's a venue to do something like this nearby.
We are in downtown.
Yeah.
So let's going back to how we started this with a little bit of creativity. Snap your fingers, and downtown has a new thing. So it's your creation. It's a new space. It's a venue. It's an organization. Whatever it is, it's a cultural asset. It could be a bar created by celebrities called Planet Hollywood. Yes, that was a thing. Think about Hemisphere. Think like Hemisphere 2068, and this is your opportunity to do a "I Dream of Jeannie" moment, Jenna. So try that out.
You have to be very careful with offering these moments. And this one might be controversial, but AJ, I would love to see a reimagined Riverwalk that's local, that's authentic, that's activated in a true localized experience for tourism and local to everybody who wants to partake in it. But I want to see an entirely new and totally reimagined Riverwalk.
Very good. Randy?
For those of you online in the room, just a little inside baseball. This was the only question that AJ gave us in advance. So everything else that you've seen was impromptu, on the spot, answer on your toes. So we had a little bit, full disclosure, we had a little bit of time to think about this one. My answer would be a massive student body. So, Taylor has committed to 15,000 students downtown. And so when Matt says, if that comes to pass, I get a little twitchy, like that has to come to pass. And how long that takes and what form that takes will be something fun to watch. But I think it's beyond UTSA and the University of Texas system. I think our university culture in San Antonio needs to commit to the core. So when I think about the one thing, if I could snap my fingers, to have 20,000 of those backpacks around downtown is the missing ingredient. We have so many other wonderful things, mixed in the bowl to make the cake. But 20,000 students is the one thing I would wish for.
Wonderful. Matt?
dude, you took mine. I want to switch seats.
21,000.
We're doubling down anyway, it's okay.
I'll pile on. 40,000, it's just an arms race for students downtown. Okay, so yes, that is what I dream of. But okay, another one, if I could snap my fingers, I would love to have an incredible professional sports team downtown. There's one I think of a lot, but that I think, I think having a great stadium, a great facility with an incredible team that the city fandom is just loving, and they're coming down to enjoy that. I think that would really be a great addition to downtown.
Wonderful. Lori?
This was such an easy question for me, and it's been the same answer for the past 15 years. I want Houston Street, not just because it's my last name, but to be the most amazing retail street in San Antonio. We do not have street level retail, and we have great bones on Houston Street, and I want to walk from the Alamo to Market Square and buy a dress, a pair of shoes, a book for my kid, have coffee, and have lunch. And it can happen. And I want to not be hot while I do it. I want there to be shade. So, and see activity on it. That's my dream.
Yeah, it's got that history already in terms of being a retail center for so many years. Back in the day when our grandparents would get a snapshot while they were walking down Houston Street. So Tommy.
Man, to add to what Lori said, one of the main reasons I came downtown to open my shop is my aunt owned boot stores in downtown San Antonio in the 70s and the 80s, and she was one of the first shops to open in River Center when it opened up too, and she used to make custom boots for Tommy Lee Jones and for George Strait, and she was in the game for a long time, and I always, coming from Brownsville, I always loved visiting her shop in downtown San Antonio. To answer your question, what everyone else said, I would love a more university district vibe in downtown. I would like for there to be like a uni district part of downtown, like very similar to like what Seattle has, which includes retail and local eateries and local coffee shops and places where what Lori said, where you can buy a dress, shoes, have lunch, have coffee, stop in for a facial, get your nails done as well. And all that being said, if there was all that with the diversity that comes with it, and I would like to see a move to a more late night downtown as well. Yeah. I'm really, really excited that Voodoo Donuts is coming and that they're going to be a 24/7 operation in downtown, which we haven't seen that in a long time, or that I'm aware of. So that's gonna bring some things to check out as well when they start doing this, because we know San Antonians will go to a place if you give them a reason to go. Yeah. And Voodoo Donuts is going to do that, and we haven't seen anybody in downtown San Antonio stay open past midnight or stop serving past 10 o'clock, Yeah. So with all that being said, I would love to see a more thriving, diverse, university-minded district in downtown. I think I'm hopeful for the tech industry as well. I think the tech industry in downtown has got their niche, and I think that they're going to find their place. And I think that in the future, San Antonio could easily be a cultural center. Like I worked in music and media, and I got to visit Oslo and Copenhagen and Berlin and New York, and I saw all these smaller culture festivals that were curated and put on by locals in their cities. And what Oslo is able to do is incredible with the Oya Festival. How that is almost all locally operated and has a very, very low carbon footprint as well. And with the way that they incorporate the festival grounds and the festival that happens downtown with the after hours is unlike anything you've ever seen before. Way cooler than South by Southwest, way cooler than what CMJ used to be like in New York. And I can see that happening, and that's what I would like to see. I would like to see a more youth-forward university district in downtown.
Thank you, Tommy.
With the resources to help them.
Thank you very much. And it looks like we're all out of time. I just want to thank all of our panelists for your leadership, for your own respective passion for downtown and all your work. So thank you again. Let's give them a round of applause. And now I'll turn it over to our CEO, our President and CEO, Angie Mock.
Thank you so much. What a way to kick off CityFest 2022 with this super important and dynamic panel. Thank you. And of course, to our board chair extraordinaire who subs as a moderator quite frequently for us. Thank you so much, AJ. Also, as you mentioned, our presenting sponsors, we wouldn't really be able to have the robust lineup that we have for both virtual and in-person events without the City of San Antonio and Bexar County Economic and Community Development. We thank them. Thanks for all of you who joined us today virtually and also in our audience. Our editor has put together, and the team has put together, like I said, a really robust lineup, so check us out and try to attend as many CityFest events as you possibly can. We wouldn't even have a CityFest if it wasn't for our founder, Bob Rivard, so thank you, Bob, for coming up with this wonderful idea a little over 5 years ago. You know, one thing that was common that I heard among our panelists is that great cities have one thing in common, and that's a great downtown. Well, I would like to offer up one other thing that great cities have, and that's great local journalism. All great cities have great local journalism, and that's what we do at the San Antonio Report. So subscribe to our newsletters, but more importantly, we're a nonprofit, so become a member so that we can continue for decades and decades to come to have credible local news that really matters to the community. Thank you for that, and join us tonight as we celebrate the West Side as our second kickoff for the first day of CityFest at Jaime's Place. We'd love to see as many of you out and about to celebrate with us CityFest 2022. Thank you so much.